morning. I'm Linda Battellini, the chair of your UUCA Board of Trustees. Whether it's your first time with us or you're a longtime member, you are welcome. We're so glad to be here for our second service led by Reverend Amanda Poppei, our senior minister candidate. Please find a chalice or a candle that you can light at home and you can join us later in the service. It has been an intense week of getting to know Reverend Amanda, and I hope every one of you took advantage of one of the 33 sessions that she held with us, with our congregation, our board, and our staff. I've learned so much about Reverend Amanda, and I want to extend my gratitude to her for the extraordinary effort that she made to connect with all of us. At the end of the service, please watch in the chat box for a link to our special congregational meeting to immediately follow this service. We'll open the Zoom webinar at 11:15 so people can join in, and we'll start the meeting at 11:30. All members in good standing should also have gotten a ballot to vote on Friday morning about calling Reverend Amanda. Check your email and enter your vote by 4 p.m. today if you haven't already. We'll have a second Zoom meeting at 6 p.m. tonight to announce the results of the vote to call Reverend Amanda. Now, as we continue our worship service, I will pass a virtual chalice on to our worship associate, Betsy Rosenblatt Rosso.
Welcome to the online service of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Arlington, Virginia, on this first Sunday of May. Thank you, Linda, for your wonderful leadership as board chair. and for passing me the chalice, the symbol of our faith and of our connection this morning as we gather from many places. My name is Betsy Rosenblatt Rosso, and it is my privilege to serve as your worship associate today. I am thrilled to welcome Reverend Amanda Poppei as our service leader this morning. As you know, Reverend Amanda is our candidate for senior minister. She has spent many hours online this past week engaging with congregants to learn their stories and share some of hers. After today's service, UUCA will hold a congregational meeting for the purpose of voting to call Reverend Amanda as our next senior minister. If you are a member of UUCA, you should have received an email ballot enabling you to vote. You may vote up until 4 p.m. today. The results of the vote will be announced at another Zoom meeting tonight at 6 p.m. Finally, I want to extend warm greetings from UUCA to all of you. While I miss being together in our beautiful sanctuary, I love that online services expand our UU universe, enabling people who wouldn't otherwise join us for worship to do so. In recent weeks, I've noticed people tuning in, such as my next-door neighbor, who is a devout Catholic, some of my Presbyterian minister friends, and my kid's pediatrician. Whether you're a hardcore UU or just curious about our faith, or you're simply looking for some Sunday morning inspiration while you drink your coffee, welcome. We're happy you're joining us today. And to all who are celebrating, I wish you Ramadan Mubarak. You may not even realize, as you step out of your front door each morning, that you are not the same person you were when you closed the door behind you the night before. You are freshly washed, having sloughed off the roughness of yesterday, ruminating on what's to come, digesting buttered toast and orange juice. Or that was you before. What if you've got nowhere to go this morning, or any morning? What if the only incentive to get out of bed is the hug and the kiss from a little boy who wants help pouring milk into his cereal bowl? Is it still a new day when the only threshold you cross is the one into your fluorescent lit kitchen? Even then, you are more than you were the day before. You've read a chapter, solved a puzzle, listened to someone's story, made a sandwich, watched a movie, sung a song, laughed at a joke, cried from despair, said a prayer, and waited for the darkness to come again. Each salty tear and sleepless hour has made its mark. Even when you have nowhere to go, you can step outside and stand in the sun, stronger for having survived another day.
Thanks, Betsy. Good morning. My name is Kelly Cole, and I am the chair of the Ministerial Search Committee. I will be performing today's chalice lighting. May we gather together as a community of memory and hope to celebrate life and its infinite possibilities for love. May we light this chalice as a symbol of the light within every human heart. May our individual sparks meet and merge, bringing both light and warmth to the world. Thank you. Now, on to the next person.
We are building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way. Feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way.
I am hoping that we might be able to tell a story here for everybody who is watching. And it's a story that comes from the Muslim tradition. It's not exactly a story that happens during Ramadan, but it talks about one of the real core values of Islam, the religion that Muslims practice. And I think we're going to figure out by the end what this value is. And it's a value that would be very much talked about during Ramadan. So this story took place long, long ago. It tells us about a wealthy merchant named Uthman ibn Affan, one of the very first followers of the Prophet Muhammad, who founded the Muslim religion, who founded Islam. This story is about Uthman ibn Affan, and it is set during a very difficult time in what is now Saudi Arabia, that part of the world. A time when there was drought all over, no rain.
So, without any rain, what's going to happen? You're not going to have anything growing. You're not going to have any crops. You're not going to have any figs. There's millions and thousands of these old, beautiful olive trees that just couldn't bear fruit because there was absolutely no rain. And all of the people in that land, all of their animals were hungry, running out of food. And they were scared. They were scared that they were going to starve.
Now let me see, do we have any hungry people who are here today to help us tell our story? Let me see and hear our hungry people.
I'm hungry. Give me food. I'm hungry.
So hungry. The people of Medellin were so hungry. So you can imagine how happy they were when they learned that a caravan was coming their way, a caravan of camels laden with food and other goods. The people were happy. Let me see some happy people.
Yes, food. Look at me.
So happy, the happiest people. Their mouths watered as they imagined how that food would taste.
Now, they had one other reason to celebrate. They were happy because Uthman ibn Affan was known for his immense generosity. Surely he wouldn't just help them with food, with this supply coming in, but he was going to give it to them at below retail price. He was going to really help them make the best of their money and get them fed. Isn't that fantastic? Let's hear it.
Yay!
Woo!
In addition to the hungry people rejoicing, the merchants rejoiced. Merchants, where are my merchants at? Let me hear it. The merchants rejoiced because as the caravan approached, they needed the food because they needed to have something to sell in their shops. They weren't even able to open their stores, which sounds familiar, because they had nothing in the shops to sell to the people. They didn't have food to sell, they didn't have goods to sell, and so the merchants were also rejoicing as they saw Uthman come along the caravan with the camels. Let me see those merchants rejoicing. Can I hear them?
Yay!
And go merchants, but I do want to warn you merchants, don't rejoice too much too quick. You see, Uthman ibn Affan has a reputation of being a very shrewd businessman. So they were happy they were getting stuff to come in that they would be able to sell, but they had to be very smart and work very hard because they knew Uthman ibn Affan drove a really hard bargain. Merchants, are you ready to bargain? Let me hear you bargaining. Let's get those bargains going. Let me hear it. You looking for goods?
There we go. There we go. We have that is live footage of a merchant trying to buy goods from Uthman.
Oh.
All right. So So the merchants went right away to Uthman ibn Affan. They were ready to buy food from his caravan so that they could sell it. They knew they could resell that food at a good price so that they could make a profit, and they were ready to offer any price that Uthman asked. However, he rejected their first offers.
Oh, those merchants were really nervous. They knew they were going to have to up their game. They offered more money to try and get him to accept their offer. But each time, Uthman would say the same thing.
I am sorry, I cannot do business with you, for I've already received a better offer.
But the merchants really started to grumble among themselves. I mean, they needed this food to be able to sell it in the stores. I wonder what merchants would sound like grumbling. Aiden and Braylon, do you think you could do some merchant grumble for us? That was very grumbly. Yes, those merchants were grumbling. How would they be able to buy the food? Could they even afford it? How were they going to get this food into their shop so that they could sell it to the people?
The merchants were getting desperate. They needed to get this food. They needed to get their livelihood back. And so they made their biggest, their best offer. 5 times what the cargo was worth. How could Uthman refuse? How could they have possibly offered any more? The merchants were just stunned in disbelief. Can I get some stunned merchants?
I can't believe it. Let me see.
Believe it.
Very well stunned, Aiden. All right, what does Uthman say?
I'm sorry, I cannot do business with you, for I've received a better offer from Allah, from God. Allah says that anyone who gives away wealth in Allah's name will get back far more than they received, or than they gave away.
And so it was that Uthman ibn Affan refused all the money from the merchants, and instead he gave away the food that those 1,000 camels in his caravan carried on their backs. And everyone rejoiced, for the people were no longer hungry, and they knew that that generosity from Uthman had been given away in Allah's name. Excellent, absolutely. Abby, let's see some happy,
We have
very
food.
people.
We have food. We actually have food. Oh.
Thank you so much to our
Chicken.
hungry and now full people, to our merchants, and of course,
Chicken.
to the generous Uthman ibn Affan for
Thank
helping
you.
us to tell this story. Walter, thank you so much for telling this story with me. I really appreciate
It's an honor.
And thank you everybody for helping us to tell a story of the values of the Muslim tradition. I had this last as I shared the story with our children. That opportunity and seeing the faces of the UUCA children in the photos remind me that although we are far apart from each other, we are connected by the relationships that we nurture. During this time and the music that follows, I invite you to share a joy or a sorrow that may be in your heart this morning. Perhaps you would speak it aloud, share it with the people with whom you may be watching this service. Perhaps you might simply acknowledge it in your own heart. Perhaps you might share it in the UUCA Book of Life, which has now a virtual form. You may share a joy or sorrow in the Book of Life by emailing uucabookoflife@gmail.com, or by sharing in the UUCA Facebook group with the hashtag Book of Life. Diane, UUCA's wonderful commissioned lay minister, will review both of those entries. She'll share names with the Friday prayer group and make sure that the lay pastoral care associates are able to respond to any particular pastoral care needs that are shared. The Book of Life, the naming aloud of our joys and sorrows, even our own silent acknowledgement of them. They remind us of the way that we are indeed connected and of the spirit of life, the fuente de amor, that connects us all to each other.
Ven hacia mí, y al corazón, cántale tu compasión, sopla dolor, sube en la mar, hasta moldear la justicia de la vida.
Spirit of life, God of many names or beyond our naming, love that interweaves among us all. We invite you into our hearts, into the space between us, into this precious community, into the world. May we find the spirit of life in every one of us. May we see it when it is hard to know it's there. May we create it with our words and our actions. May we honor it with all we are. May it be so, and amen. And now I wonder, our joys and sorrows shared, our hearts held in prayer or meditation, where I wonder, will our chalice lead us next? Where are we going?
The
Thank you so much, Fiona, for that beautiful music. I love that song, and I love the story that it comes from, the movie Moana. I did warn you that we might have one more Disney reference. I promise that it's not a regular feature of my sermons, but perhaps slightly more so when I am in quarantine with my kids. But I do love the story of Moana. It's a story of a people who begin to imagine what their future might be by remembering what their past has been, by rediscovering the passion and the hopes of their ancestors so that they can imagine a new future for themselves. And it is a story of a nature goddess who is almost destroyed by the greed of others, but who remembers her deepest self, and in so doing is able to restore life and beauty to the world around her. Perhaps it is a story for our time. I have been thinking a great deal about where UUCA has been and where it might be going this past week, and I know you have as well. You have been perhaps wondering what kind of minister I would be for you. And I hope have been thinking even more about what kind of ministry we might create together. I hope it would be a ministry of shared learning and of growth with each other. Conveniently, I was able, even in the span of this week, to include a mistake on my list of things. Check that one off. After last Sunday's service, which I was so pleased to share with you, I heard from a couple of folks how sad they were that we had not included an acknowledgement of Ramadan, a greeting of Ramadan Mubarak to our Muslim friends and the Muslims among us in the UUCA community. And I thought, well, great, I've got that mistake out of the way, and perhaps we can fix it. And so we were able to find a story for this Sunday to make sure that we honored this time. I hope that we will create together a shared ministry of growth and learning, of honest feedback and accountability, of mistake making and forgiveness and reconciliation. I hope that in part because we will need all of those things if we pursue the anti-racism and anti-oppression work that UUCA has begun, that is so much a part of UUCA's proud history and past, and that has been brought forward through the work of the 8th Principal Committee. That work is work of study and learning and training, but even more, it is work of risk-taking, of mistake-making and forgiveness. And I hope that we might explore that work together. And sometimes I imagine our coming together again will not be about mistakes and forgiveness, but instead about disagreements, about different ideas about how we might do things. Over this past week, I have been asked for my vision on different programs and areas at UUCA. What is my vision for social justice or my vision for worship? And mostly I have tried not to promise too much of anything, in part because really the vision begins with you. And so were I to come and be with you as your next senior minister, I would start by listening, by understanding what you love deeply, what you cannot let go, what you hope to see change. Perhaps the only promise I could really make with surety is that at some point, if I come to serve you, at some point I will make a decision you disagree with. And I hope that we will stay in relationship through that too. That we will stay connected, even as change brings challenge. The theme this month that UUCA is exploring is thresholds. It feels like a particularly appropriate theme for this time. UUCA has certainly crossed many thresholds in its 72-year history, ones that it chose with commitment and care, and thresholds that were thrust upon it as well. Thresholds, noticing them and honoring them, can be a way of creating meaning when we are faced with the ones that we didn't choose. I am thinking about that a lot right now as we socially distance ourselves, as we manage the change that comes with COVID-19. In our family, we have created playful thresholds through our week to try to maintain some sense of, what would I call it? Some sense of knowing what day it is. We do monochromatic Mondays where everyone dresses in the same color, and fancy Fridays when we dress up, whatever that means to us. Sometimes it's just fancy, and sometimes it seems to include unicorn heads and wings. Those little markers, those little thresholds, help us to stay grounded through the week. I'm sure you have some of your own that help you remember what day it is or what week it is as we all encounter this experience together. It's been interesting at this time to feel both a sense of incredible global solidarity, perhaps more so than at any other time in my life, knowing that we are going through here what they are going through in India and in Italy and all around the globe. And at the same time, to be so aware of the ways in which we are going through this shared thing very differently. The ways in particular that privilege shows up in the effects of COVID-19 on our lives. I think about that on multiple levels. I think about the environmental impact of the reduced traffic that makes us notice yet more keenly what we do to our world, we consumers. I think about the impact on those who work hourly jobs without guaranteed job security, those who work in the gig economy and have no organized labor power, those facing student debt, those without health insurance or without health insurance now, as they have lost the jobs that provided it to them. And I think most keenly about the racial disparity in COVID health outcomes. Linda Villarosa wrote an article for the New York Times this past weekend titled "A Terrible Price: The Deadly Racial Disparities of COVID-19 in America." Villarosa goes through an alarming set of statistics. Among them, in Michigan, Black people make up 14% of the population, but 40% of the deaths. In Wisconsin, Black people are 7% of the population, but 33% of the deaths. In New York, which has the country's highest number of confirmed cases and deaths, Black people are twice as likely to die as white people. The coronavirus pandemic, Villarosa writes, has stripped bare the racial divide in the health of our nation. Villarosa continues explaining why we are seeing these differences in health outcomes. A complex and long-standing constellation of factors, she writes, explains these higher death rates. A CDC study suggested that about 90% of the most serious COVID-19 cases involve underlying health conditions that are more common and more deadly in Black Americans and strike at younger ages. And though these health disparities are certainly worsened by poverty, they are not erased by increased income and education. The elevated rates, Villarosa writes, of these serious illnesses have weaponized the coronavirus to catastrophic effect in Black America. Our country is at a moment of threshold, at a choice point. Will we go back to what we had, or will we take this moment, This moment when we notice so keenly the disparities around us. Will we take this moment and choose something different? Julio Vincent Gambudo writes for Medium.com an article titled "Prepare for the Ultimate Gaslighting." Gambudo says that soon we will be asked to return to normal as the country, he writes, begins to figure out how we open back up and move forward. Very powerful forces will try to convince us all to get back to normal. He describes the forces of consumerism and capitalism, advertising from companies telling us we can go back to the way things were. And he begs us not to. I hope, he writes, you might consider this. What happened is inexplicably incredible. It's the greatest gift ever unwrapped, not the deaths, not the virus, but the great pause. It is, in a word, profound, writes Gambudo. Please don't recoil from the bright light beaming through the window. I know it hurts your eyes. It hurts mine too. But the curtain is wide open. What the crisis has given us is a once-in-a-lifetime chance to see ourselves and our country in the plainest of views. Sonia Renee Taylor, the author of The Body Is Not an Apology, and a commenter on society, in particular on society's effects on those who have been most marginalized historically, Taylor says it plainly. We will not go back to normal, she writes. Normal never was. Our pre-corona existence was not normal other than we normalized greed, inequity, exhaustion, depletion, extraction, disconnection, confusion, rage, hoarding, hate, and lack. We should not long to return, my friends. We are being given the opportunity to stitch a new garment, one that fits all of humanity and nature. We are being given, Taylor says, the opportunity to stitch a new garment. What might this garment look like for our world, our country? What might it look like for Arlington, Virginia? As I have been talking with social justice groups at UUCA, I have heard about the relationships you have built in the local community as well as those across the globe. And I wonder how UUCA might be part of stitching that new garment, of making sure that Arlington is led just like Uthman ibn Affan by generosity, making sure that Arlington is led by shared humanity. How might UUCA use its privilege and its power as a community to participate in that new creation, in that choice point we have before us? Just as our country is at a choice point and at a threshold, perhaps COVID has led you to reflect on thresholds in your own life. Perhaps you find at this time of what Gambudo calls the great pause, that you have indeed been able to pause, to rest, and that you need that more in your life. Or perhaps you have found yourself yet more frantic and overworked. Perhaps you see thresholds you would like to cross differently in your life. Thresholds in your most intimate relationships and how you are together at this moment. And of course, UUCA is at a threshold with choices to make. I certainly hope most deeply that you choose to call me as your next senior minister. And even then, I know that that choice If we make it together, it would be only the beginning of the choices we would make. Only the beginning of the journey of remembering our past and our ancestors, the hopes of previous generations, and of imagining the future we might have together. Imagining who we might be together. It causes me to wonder, when we come to a threshold, whether one of our own making or one thrust upon us, how do we know we are ready to cross? What can we do to prepare ourselves for the crossing? All around the globe and through history, religions and traditions have rituals of preparation, rituals that help us prepare to cross a threshold or to return to our deepest selves, to come awake. Rituals like fasting or sitting zazen, purifying ourselves. Even in our popular culture, Dorothy Gale, after all, clicked her heels 3 times when she was ready to go home, to cross that threshold. Perhaps, for us, it can begin with breath. Breath together, mine and yours, knowing that breath connects us to all living creatures and to humanity. Last Sunday, I shared the words of the Reverend Dr. Kristen L. Harper. I do not wish to breathe another breath if it is not shared with others. As you and I and UUCA and the country and the world, as we prepare for whatever threshold is in front of us, as we prepare for whatever next step we will take, wherever our journey will lead, together or alone, perhaps we can begin with breath, yours and mine. Wherever our journeys take us next, UUCA, thank you. Thank you for the stories and the time we have shared this week. Thank you for all that you have been. And thank you for all you will become.
Our tradition at UUCA is to share the plate with our partner organizations, doing good work in our community and around the world. Each of our partners makes a unique and essential contribution to improving the lives of our neighbors, amplifying the voices of people in the margins, and creating justice and peace in our world. This week, we're highlighting Unitarian Universalists for Social Justice, better known as UUSJ. The COVID-19 pandemic has revealed and deepened the stark inequalities in our country's economic and healthcare systems. But this crisis has not slowed down UUSJ's efforts to advocate for equity and justice. UUSJ's Capitol Hill Advocacy Corps is the only UU faith organization with a presence at the federal level. UUSJ advocates for UU principles on issues such as climate change, immigration, voting rights, and economic justice. Visit UUSJ.org to learn more about UUSJ's current advocacy agenda, including voter mobilization, climate legislation, and election protections, such as vote by mail, which is vital during the pandemic. Since no ushers will be knocking on your door to pass the plate to you today, there are a variety of ways you can contribute to UUCA and UUSJ. Number 1, make your contribution the old-fashioned way by writing a check and sending it to UUCA in the mail. Number 2, visit UUCA's website at uucava.org and click on Donate at the top of the page to make a secure donation using our existing platform. Number 3, use the PayPal app and direct your contribution to paypal.me/uucava. 4, download the Give Plus app and text your donation dollar amount to 703-782-8239. We understand that the current crisis has affected many of our families and members. We appreciate anything that you're able to give. Your generous gifts will be gratefully received anytime today or this week. We are grateful for all the gifts we receive. Please join me for the dedication of the offering. Let us be grateful when we are able to give, for many do not have that privilege. Let us be grateful for those who share their gifts with us, for we are enriched by their giving. Let us be grateful even for our needs, so that we may learn from the generosity of others.
I close my eyes and I can see a world that's waiting up for me, that I call my own. Through the dark, through the door, through where no one's been before, but it feels like home.
They can say it all sounds crazy. They can say I've lost my mind. I don't care if they call me crazy.
world we're gonna make. There's a house we can build. Every room inside is filled with things from far away. Special things I compile, each one there to make you smile on a rainy day.
They can say it all sounds crazy. They can say we've lost our minds. I don't care if they call us crazy.
Run away to a world that we desire. The brightest colors fill my head. A million dreams are keeping me awake. I think of what the world could be, a vision of the one I see. A million dreams is all it's gonna take. A million dreams for the world we're gonna make.
However big, however small, let me be part of it all. Share your dreams with me.
We may be right, we may be wrong, but I wanna bring you along to the world I see, to the world we close our eyes to see, we close our eyes to see. Every night I lie in bed, the brightest colors fill my head. A million dreams are keeping me awake. A million dreams. I think of what the world could be, a vision of the one I see. A million dreams is all it's gonna take. A million dreams for the world we're gonna make. For the world we're gonna make.
We have at least a million dreams. You and I and the world. At least a million dreams. And we have our chalice and our connections among us and our love. And with all of that, at least a million dreams might come true. May it be so for you.